Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
You're listening to Inside Outa with Lois, Moodley and Wayne Duvenage.
Hello and welcome to this exciting show of Inside Outa. I'm Lois Moodley, Head of Communications at the non-profit civil action organization OUTA. That's the organization undoing tax abuse. Today I'll be co-hosting with OUTA CEO Wayne Duvenage. We'll be kicking off part 2 of Wayne's conversation with special guest, Minister of Public Enterprises Pravin Gordan. Last week, they unpacked the role of civil society in the face of corruption and state capture. This week, they take a look at the private sector leadership and how our state-owned enterprises can be turned around. Following that, I'll catch up with Rudie Heyneke, our OUTA's portfolio manager for transport, about etolls and the petrol price hikes in our progress report. Now over to Wayne.
Less corruption, more accountability. Stay tuned to Inside Outa.
Hey, Minister Gordhan, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. This is for our Inside Outa broadcast. One of our frustrations has always been business sort of missing in action, taking decisions that they don't want to rock the boat of government. They do business with government, we understand that, and government has a lot of power over them with regulations. And so there was a real need for government for business to stand up, and every time they did, they got nailed. The real causes of the world and the Harrises, and that was concerning for us. So we're a bit concerned about business because there's a new normal required in the auditing industry and so forth, and we're not seeing enough action there. So what we'd hope is that government does drive this narrative of remove the fear and be brave enough to challenge us, because we can't leave it up to civil society. We're the poor cousins out there, and there's a lot of work. So we do want to work hand in hand. That's the message. At the same time, holding government to account is a challenge for us, and really that's the drive that we would like to see government initiate. Do you think that can happen?
Yeah, I mean, there are indications from the president, for example, that he wants things done differently.
Yeah.
So state capture and corruption is on the agenda. I think the lead has been given in the State of the Nation address. We've got to follow it through. Transformation in the state-owned enterprises is part of that agenda. All of us can participate, labor, civil society, and business, in ensuring that these entities become sustainable, stable, and contribute in a positive way. The third is around issues around land, but that land issue also exemplifies the whole question of what assets are in the hands of the majority of South Africans. How do we give 50% of the unemployed youth some kind of hope and positivity, so that they don't become easily tempted by this fascist populist rhetoric that some are able to exercise in certain ways as well. So in some respects, government will lead, but the job summit, the investment summit that the president has in mind, are two opportunities that are coming up for everybody to follow the lead on the one hand, but also be proactive in asking the question, what can I contribute in that particular environment? How can I be part of changing attitudes in South Africa? So there's the soft side. And the soft side is how do we get people to respect each other more? How do we understand our diversity more? How do we respect each other's culture more?
Be more tolerant.
More tolerant, more accepting of the kind of South Africa we really are.
And we got so far down that road in the Madiba days, and then this seems to be undone.
It won't entirely be undone, I think.
No.
2010, for example, while the World Cup is on in Russia, was a good moment.
Was brilliant.
Right. So there will be punctuated moments like that, where opportunities will arise for South Africans to think together, work together, and act together. We need to create more of those opportunities.
Absolutely. And the IRR has done some great research which says that what it seems like out there, driven those narratives by social media, is not the reality. We are tolerant. We do respect each other on the whole, and we've got so much going for us in that regard. We've just got to energize.
You got to build on the positive.
Demand good governance. Join us weekly on Inside Outer.
So just from our side, Minister, you were very guarded. You were politically correct while you were still a minister under Jacob Zuma's rule. I could see you biting your tongue. You were asked poignant questions which we knew you wanted to answer but couldn't. And then you were free to be that person that you have become, that person who stood up for almost a lonely figure at times as a politician standing up. There were a few of you out there, not many. And we want to just congratulate you and say thank you for that moral courage. And saying it as it is, I think that's brought you back into the fold again to go and do the repair that has to be done.
Well, you know, there's a whole lot of us and the kind of generation we belong to who became activists in the 70s and maybe early 80s in some cases. So we've been political activists, and I remain a political activist, not a politician.
I love that.
I don't look for office.
Fantastic.
If the job is given to me, and if we think we can do it, we do it.
Absolutely.
So it's been a privilege to contribute, and there are still many, many brave people. And often we want to judge brave people by what they say in the media, whereas there are different fora in which brave people operate, and they choose particular moments and particular actions in order to demonstrate where they stand on a planet, which the public might not see. So for example, if you're sitting in a closed committee meeting of an organization, the media is not there to see what a Derek Hanekom said or didn't say, or what an Aaron Motsoleri said or didn't say. Equally, if you are in structures of government, there would be particular ways of working. Not all of the people have respected that, by the way.
Okay.
So one day we'll write about that stuff.
Sure.
But it does take a formidable amount of forbearance and sometimes courage to stay in there. Because the easiest thing to do when you face with difficulties is to say, I have the option to resign.
Yeah.
I can go enjoy my family life or do something else.
Yeah.
But many, many, many people have stuck in there in order to be continued agents of change.
Yeah.
And so to your constituency, thanks for the contribution you make. There's a lot more work to do. We need to generate a whole new bunch of youngsters who also understand our past, understand the present, introduce their dimensions of thinking, which is going to be different from my generation, for example. But that will invigorate all of us. And to have a generation of people in their late 20s and 30s who are as passionate as previous activists were about the future of the country, of building non-racialism and non-sexism, and making democratic institutions work, and going into government and providing their capabilities to serve the country as a whole, even if it's for 5 or 7 years, is the kind of new ethic that I think we want to develop over time.
So, Minister, we know that, and we've watched the slide of these SOEs over the last, and if we look at the financial statements going back the last decade and the revaluing of assets, the borrowings against that, the manipulation almost of balance sheets, but just the craziness. The hole is big in all of them. We could see you fighting SAA from the Treasury point of view at the time. What are we going to do? How are we going to turn these state-owned institutions around? Because they have such a valuable role to play. They have so many good people employed, good engineers. We need them, and yet they've been decimated.
Well, there again, as I said, the President has set out the script in the State of the Nation address, which says review the governance, change the boards, look at the management, and if they're crooks, get rid of them. Obviously through legal processes, look at the financial sustainability of these outfits and stabilize that where it is appropriate. Eventually look at the operating and business models because some of these entities are not self-sustaining in the way in which they work at the moment, and take away the dependence on the fiscus, the so-called bailout phenomenon that many of the entities have relied on from time to time, either in the form of guarantees or injections of money. And at the end of the day, have a stable of SOEs or SOCs that are in line with and aligned to the national purpose, meaning if you are there to provide electricity or rail transport for export industries or import industries, do your job and do it efficiently. And don't cook the figures in order to make yourselves look good. When somebody starts looking a year later, you then begin to see the fault lines emerging in that particular regard. But ultimately, it goes beyond that as well. As you know, the President has established a Presidential SOC Council. So the idea there, once it starts operating fairly soon, is to look at all the critical SOCs. We have over 700 of them of different types. But there are probably about 10 or 15 that are really critical in money terms, but also in terms of key services that they deliver to South Africans. And ask the question, which is a point one of the board members of one of the entities made to me in the last few days, that if you take the assets of all of those entities, that's a humongous amount of money that we're talking about. So if we do effectively stabilize them, that asset base is a very valuable asset base. To begin to think through a 10 or 15 year scenario in terms of how they could become a lot more effective, both individually and as a collective. And there are many examples in the world, the Temaseks of Singapore, the Caseks of China, and so on, where a range of models are provided in terms of how the asset base of these outfits can actually be better used. But the key right now is to understand where the malfeasance is. And as you've seen, we've changed any number of boards. We're beginning to look at new management teams in several instances as well. And it's going to require some very creative thinking to reposition these entities so that they become commercially and financially viable. So that's going to be a huge challenge.
I imagine the whole business model being looked at, the finance structures, and hopefully one of the things we're looking to these new boards is to go and hold those previous boards to account. We've been saying this for some time. It's actually a fiduciary duty, we would imagine, and hopefully you're going to empower them to do that, because they've got the minutes of the meetings, they've got the contracts, they can see what was happening. We struggle.
They don't need any empowerment. The Companies Act is very clear about what your fiduciary responsibilities are. So all you have to do is show something that we often take for granted is courage and leadership. So you can be the most efficient of professionals in a particular discipline, but if you lack the courage, then you're wasting your time.
That's it.
So in many of these instances, courage is the key factor. Am I willing to do the right thing, notwithstanding how unpopular I might be, or the crises that I might actually have to go through? And as I pointed out earlier on, there is a fight back element. So you take a person off a board or off the management, and they can go into extensive litigation. And the question is, where are those resources coming from? Because often the litigation or the so-called fight back is only to go back to the old status quo. Not necessarily to improve the condition, in this instance, of a particular SOE. So I re-emphasize that there's still a long, hard battle to be fought, probably for the next year or two.
So then, just to wrap up, I'd like to just hop on that point that you could have given up. I spoke to your wife outside the Hawks when the pressure was on you and all the false cases were being brought, all the trumped up charges. And I got a sense that your personal life, it was pressure, it was immense pressure. And you could have said, I don't need this, and moved on, but you stuck true to your cause. You stood and realized that change has to happen. And we want to thank you for that, and thank you for your time, Minister.
Thank you.
You're listening to Inside Outer with Lois Moodley and Wayne Duvenage.
Welcome to Inside Outa's Progress Report. In this feature, we are joined by one of our portfolio managers each week to get an update on the work that they are doing, whether it be related to transport, water and environment, energy, local government, or special projects. Today, I'm catching up with Transport Portfolio Manager Rudie Heyneke. Rudie, thanks for joining us.
Nice to have me. Thank you for having me, Lois.
OUTA has had a lot to say about the recent petrol price increase. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, as we all know, there was an increase in the fuel price, in the fuel levies earlier this year in April. And then in July, there was a very high price increase. And currently, the petrol price is at record highs, more than it was ever in history in this country.
What's been our position on the petrol price increases? Why have the prices been so high?
OUTA is not happy with all these increases, especially on the levy. If we look at the last 10 years, the increase on the road accident fund levy was over 300%, and on the general fuel levy, we're talking about 105%. That is way too high and way above the inflation rate for the period of time.
You recently handed over a report to the union buildings, to the newly formed economic cluster that was announced by the President Ramaphosa recently. What's the gist of that report?
Yes, on 5 July, the President gave the cluster instruction to look at the fuel prices and come up with solutions. How are they going to sort out the problem? OUTA took it on themselves because they were invited as civil society organizations in the statement that the cluster released. OUTA took it upon themselves to prepare a document and make recommendations for the cluster as well as for the President to see how we can resolve the problem of high fuel prices. And we issued all the immediate steps that can be taken to fuel or to alleviate the way of living in South Africa for the consumer.
And one of that obviously is to have etolls scrapped. But
yes, that's right. One of the recommendations was to scrap the etolls, as well as to lower prices on tollgate, toll fees right across the country. It's not only for the benefit of Gauteng drivers, but also for the rest of the country using the toll roads.
And you also had an auto workshop not so long ago, and I'm sure a lot came out of that. Was there any information from that workshop used in this report?
Yes, at the auto workshop, the participants were very concerned about the high number of road accident fund claims, and we had lengthy discussions about it. And it is quite simple in theory. If you look at the amount, or if we have stricter traffic laws, we will have safer roads, we will have less accidents, less RAF claims, and we can have lower fuel levies.
This is interesting. We're being hauled into court towards the end of this month in our complaint against Dudu Myeni. One of her counterparts or friends is refusing to give us some information that would incriminate her as a delinquent director. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, that's correct. You will remember that Daniel Mashlangu, the director of BNP, was involved in a big loan deal that didn't come off and that OUTA stopped 2 years ago. He's part of we subpoenaed him, issued a subpoena for documentation from him. Delinquent director case. He refused to bring the documents to court or to supply to us, and he went to court and brought an application to get this subpoena set aside. Now, this matter will be heard on the 30th of July, and we are actually looking forward to come face to face with Mr. Mashlangu's legal team.
Thanks, Rudie. If you would like to know more about our transport portfolio, pop over to our website. That's www.outa.co.za. And there, while you're there, please check out our supporters page and consider becoming a supporter.
engage in active citizenry. Join us weekly on Inside Outer.
I hope you enjoyed that second and final installment of our special edition broadcast featuring Minister Pravin Gordan in the conversation with Outa's CEO, Wayne Duvenage. And if you want to watch the full video, please go on to our website or our social media pages. But before we wrap up today's show, we have a special guest. On the line is Outa supporter Candy Perry. Thanks for making the time to talk to us, Candy.
Thank you so much. It's just such a pleasure.
Well, you took active citizenry to a whole new level. Please tell us a bit about the marathon you ran.
So I decided last year that I was going to run my first marathon. Mm-hmm. And it's always been a really big bucket list thing for me to do, to run a marathon that's a destination. So I chose the Falls Marathon. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, if I'm going to run 42 kilometers, I'm definitely going to try and raise money for a good cause. And nothing else made more sense than raising money for Outa.
That's fantastic. And I mean, it is a long run. So is fighting corruption. We're in it for the long haul. Tell us, how much money did you raise in the end, for Outa?
It was just over 47,000 rand.
What?
So I was really, really chuffed. Yeah, it was great. I had a lot of customers who supported me, and obviously our friends and family. It was fabulous.
That sounds amazing. Thank you. 47,000 Rand for Outa. I'm just really, that's amazing work, Candy. So we really appreciate it. And obviously, it goes a long way to fighting corruption, making South Africa a better place. But you tell me, why do you support Outa?
I think these days everybody needs to be an activist. Mm-hmm. Tape at home with your kids, with your family. Everybody needs to fight for what's good and what's right. Because if nobody stands up, who knows what's going to be left of society one day. And corruption is one of those things that doesn't just affect one small element of the population. It affects absolutely everybody. There are a lot of great causes to support, but they're very specific. Whereas corruption and fighting corruption really does assist everybody in just having a better future, effectively.
Well, Outa is made up of fabulous supporters like Candy. It is because of people like Candy, individuals who stand up and say, I'm going to do something, I'm going to take action, I want to see corruption eradicated from South Africa. And taking that leap of faith is what makes Outa the organization that we are today. So thank you so much to Candy and to our supporters. Without you, we could not do the work that we do. We will catch you next week, same time, same place, here at brandlive.co.za.
Thanks for listening to Inside Outer. Tune in next week when we delve deeper into undoing tax abuse.